Hello and welcome again, you guys, back to our channel. Let's see now. So I ended up deciding that for Halloween, because of lack of time to really do anything else I'm interested in doing, we're going to read another fanfic. Yay! Muppet arm flailing and such. So because it's Halloween, it's going to be a spooky story. It actually falls under the genre of horror and tragedy, and it's a very interesting idea that, as far as I'm aware, those in the Harry Potter fandom don't really talk about all that much. Like, it's talked about or acknowledged, I believe, but it's not really a thing, you know? Anyway, so the story is called Mandragora, and the summary reads as such. Consider the curiously humanoid mandrake root, or mandragora. It is hideously ugly, deadly dangerous, and a powerful restorative. Why would anything else matter? A Tale of Horror, please review, is also in the summary. So, yeah, once again, the links will be down in the description below if you guys are interested in reading it yourself, you know, in whatever inner voice could read to you if you would like that better than myself. But please like the video anyway and subscribe if you enjoy what I'm doing on this channel. I'm just doing all kinds of things that I like, seeing what really sticks or what I can do during this time and enjoy doing. Alright, so the story is once again Mandragora by Nothing Pretentious. Love the name. Alright, here we go. Professor Pomona Sprout hummed as she worked. The mandrakes in the pots in front of her were now fully grown. Each was roughly the size and shape of a 3-year-old child, but their mottled green skin had darkened to a pleasant brownish olive color. The tufty leaves that sprouted from their heads moved constantly, despite the stillness of the warm, moisture-laden air inside the greenhouse. There were about 24 left now, from the 100 she had started with this year. Severe frosts and heavy snow had killed a few, despite the scarves and socks she'd had her students fit them with. Others had fallen to greenfly and a small horde of flesh-eating slugs. There had also been some rather overzealous watering from her second years. Those sorry specimens had become all bloated and leaky and rotten, weeping rancid resins from their herbaceous eyeballs, and Pomona had quickly thrown them onto the compost heap before they could spread disease. The herbology professor was now engaged in pulling each healthy adult plant from its pot, cleaning it, and laying it out on the benches ready for preparation. She hummed as she did so. Pomona couldn't hear herself humming, of course. The mandrakes were none too pleased to be wrenched from the soil of their pots, and were making their voices heard. She was wearing bright pink fluffy earmuffs, enchanted to completely silence the plants' deadly cries. But Professor Sprout always hummed while she worked. She did so now habitually. Small, grotesque faces looked up at her, trapped in various expressions of outrage and fear, lips moving to no avail. Sprout tucked an escaped wisp of gray hair back behind one grubby ear and hummed. Truly ugly things, mandrakes. Dangerous, too. Professor Sprout hadn't let her junior students near them since the plants had become all moody and hormonal. Botanical text said those were the indications that the mandrakes' voices would soon crack and break, gaining the power to kill, rather than simply stun. Oh yes, they were strange creatures, or rather, roots, something anyway. They really were like no other plant Pomona knew. With a deft movement, she hobbled the plant before her with a piece of garden twine, preventing its escape. Funny that they would be so jolly useful in so many antidotes and salves. Yes, it was ironic, really, she thought. The little blighters were fatal when alive and became life-saving in death. She wiped the last of the mud and compost away from the final mandrake and looked upon the row of gibbering plants with satisfaction. They had a weird method of propagation, too, Sprout mused, picking the first squalling specimen up by its heels and carefully prizing the leaves out of its head with a dibber. They birthed a lot like humans, except underground, in the wet, marshy areas that they favored for breeding. After budding off, they would migrate to better growing conditions, uprooting themselves and crawling or stumbling until they found the right soil. They would scream to keep themselves safe when they sensed predators, protecting their newborn offshoots, which they carried around too. Apparently, the mature mandrakes sometimes traveled in groups, taking turns to keep up a persistent cry. Quite innovative, really. Amazing how some plants worked like that, just by intuition. Slowly and precisely, still humming an unheard ditty, Pomona Sprout worked her way through all the mandrakes, paring them carefully down to just the living root. Pomona picked up the whetstone and ran it thoughtfully up and down her blade. Many would find a charm would do just as well here, but she preferred a hands-on approach, even for a mildly distasteful job such as this one. Besides, she'd never really had the temperament for charms. A large chopping knife would be best for this particular task. The plants' skins were thick, but a serrated edge would just cause them to twist about even more. They were already trying to escape. No point making the job unnecessarily difficult. One of the mandrakes still had bad skin, she noticed. A little bit weedy, that one, but it would still make a fine restorative draught. The sunlight of late spring poured down through the roof of the greenhouse 3, glinting on the edge of the steel knife as she moved it slowly up and down the sharpening stone with a practiced hand. Mandrakes, Sprout thought, shaking her head ruefully. Truly fascinating plants, if a bit disconcerting. A real shame to have to harvest them. She'd have to get some more in the next year. They weren't too difficult to grow, luckily, as long as you could keep the flesh-eating slugs away from them. Funny, actually, usually plants weren't meaty enough for that particular pest, but mandrakes were almost animals, really. They looked almost human. Sprout's knife stilled for a moment on the whetstone. It was a crazy thought, of course, that had flitted through her mind as quickly as a pixie with an armful of stolen buttercups. If mandrakes were, well, alive, in more than just the basic sense of the word, if they could think or feel, then someone would have noticed by now, obviously. Some wise wizard would have pointed out that the plants were sapient, and there'd be provisions to protect them, and so forth. Sure, the young roots behaved just like human babies, and sure, anyone would notice the mandrakes kept a passing resemblance to children and then young adults as they grew up. The plants were always curious and contested amongst themselves for dominance, and sometimes got all sullen and droopy. Sprout herself had witnessed one piercing its ears. Sure, some of them hunted caterpillars with crude spears, and they often seemed to fall in love, and there were persistent rumors which said that mandrakes that got too old and went to seed would fashion themselves flannel trousers and smoke pipes carved out of sticks. But that was all just life imitating art. Happened all the time, really. Besides, The things couldn't even talk. All they did was scream, as if their lives depended on it. And their blood was green, not red. Satisfied, Pomona Sprout put down the sharpening stone and chose the youngest mandrake as her first struggling specimen, dragging it towards her by the heels across the rough wooden planks of the table. The knife rose and fell, a parabola of steel glittering in the sun. With slight disgust, Pomona Sprout breathed the cloying scent of mandrake juices. It was something like drowned earth moans and rotting rose petals, and also something else entirely. With one hand, she scooped the latest pile of dripping, bleeding chunks into a cauldron put under the bench for that purpose, and still she hummed. Her knife fell and rose and fell again, beneath its gleaming edge, entirely unheard because of a pair of pretty pink magical earmuffs. The mandrakes screamed. And that's the end of this fanfic. So once again, remember, the link is down below if you would like to read it. This time I left out a few bits of the story. It wasn't actually part of the dialogue, more like little quotes and excerpts from different, I guess, Harry Potter books or chapters or other types of merchandise that they might have read from, either from like Pottermore fandom or official books. I'm really not sure, but it helps to bring a certain type of perspective into the fanfic if you need that. I decided not to read those parts of it. Anyway, let me know what you think of this story. I hope you guys liked it. The first time I read it, I found it appropriately chilling because, oof, man, so dark. Pomona, to me personally, it was like looking at things from the point of view of a crazy, indifferent serial killer. Like, she's just killing these living beings for a certain purpose, methodically and habitually, while to them they're being systematically raised and slaughtered, and they know it, and they're trying to fight it, but their methods don't work because she's already prepared for it. It's oof, man. I thought it'd be appropriate for Halloween. So again, give a like, subscribe, and comment what you think. And I am open to suggestions of reading fanfics. At the moment, I'm only reading one-shots or short completed stories. So, yeah, keep that in mind if you end up offering any suggestions. Alright, I'll see you guys next time in another video. Bye-bye.